Starting off in this location, you can see your expansion line that takes expanded coolant to the expansion tank. You also have on the tank your pressure cap and coolant supply line. You also have in this location both your low pressure and high pressure air conditioning refrigerant lines, and you also have your dust cover that covers your low pressure air conditioning recharge point. Moving the camera to behind the offside headlight, you can see your electrical connector to allow the driver to adjust headlight aim. Just above that, you have your service adjustment to allow service personnel to adjust headlight aim. You also have in this location one of your service covers that allows service personnel to access the inside of the headlight, and you also have your electrical connector to control and power that headlight. Moving the camera to this location, you can see your offside engine mount and offside engine mount bracket. Inside the engine mount, you've got rubber that is used to reduce vibrations from going from the powertrain into the chassis. Moving the camera to this location, you can see quite a few different components here. For example, you can see your air conditioning recharge point dust cover for your high pressure air conditioning line. You also have your brake fluid cap and tank. On the tank, you have your sensor that tells the driver if the brake fluid is running low. You also have in this location your supply line that takes brake fluid to your clutch control circuit, your sensor to measure how much vacuum is in the brake booster, and one of your brake lines that goes from the master cylinder to the ABS modulator. Moving the camera to this location, you can see your master cylinder. Moving the camera to this location, you can see your pre-cat O2 sensor. You also have your differential pressure sensor. You also have your electrical connector for both of your exhaust gas temperature sensors, and heat shielding that covers your turbocharger turbine housing. Moving the camera to the right, you can see your oil supply line that supplies the turbocharger bearings with oil. You also have your turbocharger compressor housing, and your pipe that takes air to your inlet of the intercooler. Moving the camera here, you have your rocker cover, you also have your oil filler cap, and behind that you have your dipstick. You also have all three of your coil packs, 1, 2 and 3. Moving the camera to this location, you can see your supply line for your fuel rail. You also have in this location your intake manifold plenum and intake manifold runners. You also have your pipe here that's part of your positive crankcase ventilation system, which I mentioned earlier. And you also have your map sensor and this pipe here, which I mentioned earlier, that leads to your inlet of the intercooler. Moving down in this location, just underneath your intake manifold plenum, you have your alternator. The alternator in this car consists of your alternator pulley, your alternator coolant holes and stator windings. You also have your rectifier assembly and one of your main positive cables. Offside of the radiator module, you can see quite a few different components here. For example, you've got one of your radiator pipes, which I mentioned earlier. You also have your radiator and fan shroud, your inlet pipe and outlet pipe for the intercooler, and your intercooler. You can just see out of shot your air conditioning compressor. This sensor here in this location is your boost pressure sensor. This is the pipe that I mentioned earlier that leads to your intercooler outlet. Now, if you were to follow that pipe past the sensor, it would lead to your throttle body, which is this component here. Moving the camera to this location, you can see quite a few different components here. For example, you can see a coolant temperature sensor, one of your radiator pipes, a vent line for the transmission, your 2 selector cables, a big wiring harness, your clutch housing, and other components. At the back of the engine compartment, you can see your 2 pipes that takes coolant to and from your heater matrix. You can also see one of your bleed nipple dust covers. You also have in this location coolant pipes, one of your chassis ground cables, and your bulkhead. Moving the camera to this location, you can see your ABS modulator. Now on the modulator, you have your pump, your 2 brake lines that goes to and from your master cylinder, your 4 brake lines, 2 for your brake caliper piston cylinders, and the other 2 for your brake drum cylinders. You also have your modulator block and your electrical connector for your ABS control unit. Moving the camera forwards in this location, you have your cover that covers your positive post. Moving back from this location, you have your negative jump start terminal. To the right of that, you have your battery monitor and sensor. You also have on the 12-volt battery your battery grab handle and battery information sticker. One thing I forgot to mention is you have a vent line going from the battery. The 12-volt battery in this car sits on a battery tray. Just in front of the 12-volt battery, you have one of your main positive cables. To the right of the battery, you have your cover for one of your power distribution centers. Moving further back in this location, you can see your washer fluid cap and tank. You also have on your scuttle panel coolant holes and a piece of rubber that is used to prevent water from going into the engine bay via the scuttle panel. In the center of the slam panel, you have a cutout for your safety latch and safety latch lever. Just in front of the 12-volt battery, you have your air filter box lid. You can just see your air intake pipe to the left of the air filter box lid. This pipe leads to your inlet of the turbocharger compressor housing. In front of your air filter box lid, you have covering that protects your bonnet release cable. At the bottom rear of the engine compartment, you can see your post-cat O2 sensor. This sensor is used by the engine control unit to measure catalytic converter efficiency. You can also see in this location one of your exhaust gas temperature sensors and other components. Underneath your offside engine mount bracket, you've got your auxiliary belt system. This system consists of your alternator pulley, your water pump pulley, your crankshaft auxiliary belt pulley, and your air conditioning compressor pulley. Offside rear of the engine compartment, you can see quite a few different components here. For example, you can see your oil return line from the turbocharger, 2 pipes that leads to and from your electric water pump, your cylinder block, and the underneath of your catalytic converter and gasoline particulate filter module. Thank you very much for watching my video, and goodbye.